Welcome to this week's session. I am excited to welcome Joe Marino, CEO of OpenDR, and Austin Deere, Director of Business Development at OpenDR as well. This week, we're going to be chatting about scheduling technology and how that can improve patient satisfaction. So welcome, Joe and Austin. We're happy to have you here this week.
Thank you for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is definitely your area of expertise. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in terms of patient satisfaction, this seems like an easy win for practices. I think we've all, as we've started to chat about before we jumped on, we've all had experiences where scheduling has been a nightmare. So offering more options to patients is certainly an easy win. So let's start off and just talk about what you're seeing in the market in terms of scheduling processes that practices are using.
Sounds good. I'll start with that one. OpenDR's been in business and has been really pushing for patient engagement tools since around 2014 commercially. And although that doesn't seem like that long ago, in the beginning, nobody wanted to open up their schedules to patients. Everybody was afraid that even though patients were consumers and were out there using digital tools, they really didn't want to do anything. And it was only small increments of change over the next several years. And then we hit 2019, 2021. Some of that fueled by the pandemic. We're seeing more and more practices go online with digital tools. And when we speak about digital tools, it's things like scheduling your appointment in real time, filling out your forms, receiving notification. So it went from really not wanting to do much in 2014 to 2022, where practices are really looking to deliver an Amazon-like experience, where I could do everything pre, during, and post appointment. So we've seen and Austin has some statistics, I believe. We've seen an enormous increase in offering these tools, yet there's still a long way to go. For any of us on the call, including Austin and I, if you have to schedule an appointment and you have to call someone, it can be a very painful experience. So we are seeing good movement. But we think there's a long way to go. And what we do are more complex appointments, such as radiology. And we're seeing clients schedule not just annual mammograms, but we're seeing MRIs, CTs, et cetera. So patients are already there. We're just trying to work with clients and healthcare systems to get them there as well to offer it to patients. Austin, anything else on that?
You know, I think I saw U.S. Department of Labor said 4.5 million job quits in March of 2022, which is the largest record on studies. So a lot of people are hurting for staff, and one way that you can supplement staff is by bringing in automated solutions to fit those needs.
Are you starting to see an increase? Austin, you talked a lot about the staffing challenges. Is that starting to push technology adoption around the ability to self-schedule?
The answer is yes. We were seeing an increase pre-pandemic as well in terms of utilization for online scheduling. And I think what's really catapulted greater adoption has been a longer wait time, right? And we were joking before the webinar that everyone on the panel had a bad experience, scheduling a doctor's appointment. Just being on the phone for a long period of time, the customer service has gone down. People are worn out, working in the healthcare setting. And I think the longer and the worse that process becomes for patients, it's naturally going to drive them to say, well, I'll just do this later when it's convenient for myself. So I think across the board, Joe, and you can chime in, we pretty much are seeing every client reaching, new high water marks in terms of patient utilization for online scheduling.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is you have to embrace the technology, because I could guarantee you that everyone on this call has used a QR code or has used online scheduling for some type of, whether it's a pet appointment, hair appointment, golf appointment. And I think healthcare is going to go along with that, and has been going along with that. So I think that's important to see. And again, each month, each week, our clients' numbers continue to drive up. You have to have that mindset that this is important to you, and you're offering this to your patients because you want to spend time with them and not time with the administrative work. Of my 45-minute doctor's appointment yesterday, my year and a half physical, because I was late, she spent, and she apologized profusely, she spent more than half of it on her computer putting in data. So anything you can do to get the patient in there and have them be seen and focus on the patient and have all the other stuff done digitally will certainly logically improve patient satisfaction.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're seeing these scheduling options impact patient satisfaction? And I think a part of that too is, have you seen practices that have actually lost patients, or they just don't schedule, which obviously impacts health? In your experience, have you seen any of that?
Yeah, and we speak to a lot of clients, a lot of companies out there, especially within the radiology space. And there's a known phenomenon called leakage. So I receive the order, but I never schedule the order. And I never go to do that because it's too hard for me. Either the practice is calling me and I don't know who it is, and I never answer the phone, or I don't call them back. And what happens is, by offering these tools, you can really reduce the time it takes to get that patient scheduled. You can reduce the leakage. You could reduce no-shows. I mean, how many times have we had appointments on my eye doctor, and I said, well, can you send me a reminder? And they're like, well, we don't do reminders. The chances of me ever making that appointment are really slim to none.
Zero.
Because you're like, we're all busy during the day, and then all of a sudden you get a call and they're like, where are you? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm at work. So I think it's going to be a necessity. And what's happening is, you want to drive down those no-shows. You want to decrease that leakage and the time it takes to get somebody scheduled. Austin, can you give a stat about the client, that how many they're getting scheduled to the 24 hours?
Yeah, so a couple points that Joe just mentioned there, just conversion rates. So patient satisfaction. What we saw with one client is that we can actually text the patient as soon as we get the order open doctor, and we text them to self-schedule themselves. And what we were seeing is about 36% on a monthly 6-month running average for patients doing it themselves. And of those 36%, 3 out of every 4 patients were doing it within the first 24 hours. So to us, that means a couple different things. One, it's important to the patient to feel engaged in the healthcare journey, and they want to get scheduled sooner rather than waiting for the practice to contact them. And on top of that, we've been working with one client to rate the different patient satisfaction between online scheduling and calling in. And we actually have a slightly higher patient satisfaction rate for patients that schedule online, because that first impression, that first portion of the practice, the first engagement with the practice is, if you can make it simple, easy, and convenient, patients are going to move towards it.
Yeah, and I don't know who's on the call or what parts of healthcare, but it really, if we could schedule, or you could schedule radiology appointments, which are very technical and complex, you certainly can schedule other types of appointments, whether it's orthopedic, physical therapy. So we should never go to a site anymore in this day and age and not be able to do all of this digitally. Nobody has a printer anymore, or one that works. So why not fill out the forms online? Things like that. It's really logical. And I think we're moving now at a faster pace within healthcare. So I think those are some of the things you should be thinking about, and how do you get there, and how do you transition from an analog world to a digital world that everybody lives in today.
What other benefits do you see in terms of implementing scheduling technology? And kind of as a follow-up to that, any indicators that you all use for practices to say you need to implement something? I mean, things like wait times, attrition, things like that. Would
Yeah,
love to hear more.
I'll take the first part, Austin. I think the biggest thing we see is that you're unable to get through to a live scheduler, that the phone lines are clogged or there's a long wait. And,
Sure.
you know, when you're on the phone for even 3 or 5 minutes in dog years, that seems like hours. And if you can't get through, then you're either going to go somewhere else or not go at all. So as I think Kate said before, you know, you lose that revenue, but it impacts health as well. So I think that's a big issue, is that you cannot get through to the practice to schedule, and it's very frustrating. And then what happens is it's loss of revenue, and then those patients may go somewhere else as well.
Are practices capturing data around hold times, wait times for scheduling?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
definitely.
Austin.
A lot of our larger clients, these are metrics that are measured basically through their call centers, right? So they're looking at wait times, hold times, abandonment rates, things of that nature, because they know if they're offering a certain level of patient satisfactory phone service, that those will ultimately all drop, right? And so the likelihood that they get people scheduled faster with a higher patient satisfaction rate goes up. So almost all of our clients are measuring those things, and those have all gone up since the pandemic. I mean, there's no way around to say that. I would say that every client that we speak to on a routine basis is still struggling with those numbers. But in terms of the benefits from scheduling technology, other benefits is the outcomes for the patient, right? I mean, if you can get somebody scheduled today rather than 3 days from now, you know, that has a downstream effect in terms of their quality outcome. And I think sometimes that's lost within the scheduling process, but it's the most important factor.
I would also think that independent practices are competing with IDNs, health systems, with practices underneath them, with lots of fancy technology that they can afford because they're an IDN. So from a competitive standpoint, independent practices, I would think, cannot afford to have patients sitting on hold forever, especially if the IDN down the street can get them in immediately.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And I think, but what the independent world has is they could be more nimble, they could move quicker. So if you do that, and I think the health systems, you'll probably find that we're seeing it, that health systems are going to try to compete in your markets by opening up these low cost, high value outpatient centers versus going to, let's say, the hospital. And I think in doing that, they'll be forced to use technology. So I think everyone on the call that runs an independent group that's not part of a health system, it absolutely has to be part of your strategy, because everyone's going to be competing for that same consumer.
What tips do you have? So from a practice on the call, this all sounds great. I need to implement this. How do I start to evaluate, and who all from my practice should be included in that evaluation?
You're talking about providing online scheduling and digital solutions. It's really a culture change, and that culture change just can't happen from the top. It has to really hit each department head. It has to hit, you know, the people with the boots on the ground. Everyone needs to understand why we're implementing this and what are the benefits to you personally, right? And I think that when you bring all those different decision makers in and you talk through the process, you're going to come up with a more fully vetted, more complete solution. And then to the second point to which Joe said in terms of evaluation, you know, I think you got to find a vendor that's willing to be pliable in the sense that you can configure it around what you're currently doing. And you need to find a vendor that also allows for you to put as much up there online, right? As a consumer, for other industries, I'm used to banking where I can deposit checks, check my checking account, transfer money, do A through Z simply from my mobile device. And, you know, if I come to that experience with yours and it's very limited, that's going to deter me from next time using those digital solutions. So finding somebody that kind of has an end-to-end solution is important as well.
What about integrations? Is that something that they should be thinking
point.
about?
Yeah, that's probably the best question, because I always get a little frustrated when I'm on a call with someone and they're like, yeah, we have scheduling. It's real, it's really
Right.
just a fancy request for an appointment. And that might be the most dangerous thing, because it goes into this cycle of, I contacted you, then you try to contact me, and I try to call you back, and days and weeks go by. I think if you're going to get a scheduling solution in this day and age, you must ensure that it's real time, that the messages, as soon as someone schedules on your system, it comes off of our system. The minute someone schedules, or second, on our system, it comes off of your system. This way, you don't have to have the schedulers touching the appointments afterwards. You want it to be truly real time, so you could free up those resources.
Consumers are smart. They're not dumb. They know if it's a real appointment or not. The moment you go onto the cable company website and you flip on the chat button for help, it's a bot versus when it's a real person. So, that's no different for scheduling. You got to have a real-time solution for sure.
I think that's a good point too, in that we've all gone to, it could be anything. And it says, schedule your appointment, and you go in to do that. And it's like you said, it's just a form and then somebody's got to call you. It's the worst. I mean, you think you're going to be able to schedule it in real time, and you just, like you said, end up playing phone tag. So what about implementation? Any best practices that you can share around that?
Yeah, I think for implementation, the most important thing is to have a clearly written out statement of work of what you're going to deliver, when you're going to deliver it, and to make sure that both sides understand why. In our case, we have two parts to that implementation. One is the technical interface work, so the systems speak to each other. The other is building out your practices, your questions. What questions will I ask if someone wants to schedule an MRI or an orthopedic appointment? And you really have to do a lot of planning, and then make sure you understand what the results of that planning will be, and how the system works, and especially related to the interface. So I think it's super important to make sure you meet with your vendor. I don't like that word vendor, your partner, on a regular basis, to understand what you're doing and how it'll impact your system. And for us to understand how you do things. What do you mean by a reschedule? How is it changed in your system? What happens when you reschedule? All those types of things. That way, the system will work smoothly when you go live.
I think relying on your partner and implementation for best practices is extremely important. Listen to the partner, develop a go-to-market strategy that is unique for you, and then set goals. I think that's something that's always underlooked. Where do you want to take this product? Where do you want this to be in 12 months? Is it 30% of your patients are scheduling online, or you want all of your 100% of your exams offered online in the next 6 months? Really set some goals so that you keep the accountability within yourself.
All right. Well, thank you both. This was really, really helpful. Lots of really good information. And thank you both for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Appreciate the
it.
opportunity.